Good day everyone. I am a member of Study Hub 3. I am Leslie Mates Galera from BSed English 1A. So, for today's video, we are going to discuss about the 6 series on child and adolescent development. So, what are you waiting for? Let's get started. I will introduce myself again. I am Leslie Mates Galera. So here in this video, I will be discussing about Sigmund Freud psychoanalytic theory. So Sigmund Freud psychoanalytic theory is a foundational framework in psychology that emphasizes the influence of the unconscious mind on behavior, personality, and emotional experiences. Psychoanalytic theory. Freud proposed that human behavior is driven by unconscious motives and conflicts, particularly those related to sexual and aggressive instinct. He divided the mind into three parts, which is the id, which seeks immediate pleasure, the ego, which mediates between the id and reality, and the superego, which represents moral standards. This interplay often leads to internal conflicts resulting in anxiety and psychological distress. Next is personality fixation. Freud introduced the concept of fixation, which occurs when an individual becomes stuck in one of the psychosexual stages of development. Oral stage. This stage is centered around the infant's pleasure center of the mouth. Activities like sucking, biting, and breastfeeding are crucial for developing trust and comfort. Anal stage. During this stage, the focus shifts to bowel control and potty training. Children learn to gain pleasure from the process of elimination and begin to assert their independence. Phallic stage. Children become aware of their bodies and develop sexual identities. Latency stage. Sexual urges are repressed as children focus on social interactions, school, and hobbies. Friendship become important, and the energy is directed toward developing skills and relationship, laying the groundwork for adult life. And lastly, the genital stage. This final stage marks the resurgence of sexual interest and the ability to form mature sexual relationships. Successful navigation of their earlier stages leads to healthy relationships, a balanced approach to love and work, and the development of a sense of connection with others. Each stage has specific conflicts that must be resolved for healthy personality development. If conflicts are not adequately resolved, the person may exhibit behaviors associated with that stage later in life. For example, someone fixated in the oral stage may develop habits like smoking or overeating, reflecting unresolved and dependency issues. Lastly is the talking cure. The talking cure, also known as talk therapy, is a therapeutic technique developed by Freud to help individuals assess their unconscious thoughts and feelings through methods like free association, where patients are encouraged to speak freely about their thoughts and dreams analysis. Therapists can uncover repressed emotion and unresolved conflicts. The goal of the talking cure is to bring these unconscious issues to conscious awareness, allowing patients to process and resolve them, ultimately leading to improved mental health. Together, these concepts form the core of Freud psychoanalytic theory, highlighting the complexities of human behavior and the therapeutic potential of exploring the unconscious mind. Freud's work laid the groundwork for modern psychotherapy despite its evolution and criticism over the years. So, for my understanding about Sigmund Freud's theory is that Freud's psychoanalytic theory posits that human behavior is largely influenced by unconscious processes structured around three components: the id, which drives basic instinct, the ego, which mediates between desire and reality, and the superego, representing the moral standard. He introduced the concept of personality fixation, where unresolved conflicts during psychosexual stages can lead to specific adult behaviors linked to those stages. Lastly, the talking cure, a therapeutic approach he developed, involves techniques like pre-association and dream analysis to help individuals assess and articulate unconscious thoughts, bringing these issues into conscious awareness for resolution. Collectively, these ideas highlights the complexity of the mind and underscore the importance of understanding unconscious motivation for psychological well-being.
Hello to each and everyone. I am teacher Ashley Cosimachika, and for today I will be discussing one of the philosopher and his theory. So before we proceed to our proper discussion, I will be asking a few questions that is related to our discussion, that is related to our topic. So number one, do you know who is this philosopher? So this philosopher is no other than Jean Piaget. Do you know what is his theory? So his theory is about cognitive development. Do you know that Jean Piaget and his theory about cognitive development, it has 4 stages. And do you know what are the 4 stages? Later on, we will be discussing about the theory of Jean Piaget. So lastly question, do you know what is our senses? Yeah, that's right. We have the sight, the smell, the taste, the touch, and the hearing. So for today, I will be discussing the philosopher that I'm talking about is Jean Piaget, and his theory is about cognitive development. So Jean Piaget born in August 9, 1896. So he was a Swiss psychologist known for his work on child development. So Piaget studied the intellectual development of his own 3 children to create a theory which is the cognitive development. So he used his 3 children to create a theory that described the stages that children pass through in the development of intelligence. So the first stage in cognitive development of Jean Piaget theory is the sensory motor stage, 0 to 2 years. So sensory motor stage, it explores the world through senses and action. So at this stage, children learn through their senses like sight, hearing, touching, taste, and smelling. So using these senses, the children learn things. They develop their knowledge, their schema is improving. So the next stage is the pre-operational stage, 2 to 7 years. It represents and refers to objects and events with words or images. Use intuitive rather than logical reasoning. Believe inanimate objects possesses human feelings or emotions. So at this stage, children from 2 to 7 years old, children uses things like toys that help their cognitive development, their intellectual development through pretend play scenario. So children become more imaginative and curious at this stage. So the third stage is the concrete operational, 7 to 11 years old. So concrete operational conserve, reverse their thinking and classify objects, think logically and understand analogies, but only object concrete events. So at this stage, children from 7 to 11 years old start to develop their thinking. Their schema has improved, which they learn a lot that improve their knowledge. They use their thinking strategy. So the last stage of cognitive development, the theory of Jean Piaget is the formal operational, 12 years old and above. This stage uses abstract reasoning about hypothetical events or situations, consider logical possibilities, and systematically examine test hypothesis. So at this age or at this stage, the children's cognitive development is still developing, still improving. At this age of the children, of a child, they start to think they have critically thinking that will help their curiosity answer and that will challenge their intellectual abilities. Their cognitive development is still important at this age. So at this age, also at this stage, 12 years old and above, the children starting to know what is their actions, what are the possibilities, outcomes of their decisions and actions. So they are being at the stage of becoming mature ones. We are now done discussing the four stages of cognitive development under the theory of Jean Piaget. So and other informations under Jean Piaget cognitive development, the schema, assimilation, accommodation, and equilibration or equilibrium. So schema is a mental framework for organizing and interpreting information or interpreting information. Assimilation, process of adding new information to existing schema by fitting new experiences into existing understanding. Next is the accommodation. Accommodation modify existing schema or create new ones for new informations, adapt and expand understanding through this process. Next is the equilibrium or equilibration. Derives from cognitive development by seeking balance of assimilation and accommodation. And this equilibrium from new information motivates learning and adaptation for a more sophisticated understanding of the world. We are now done discussing the Jean Piaget and his theory, what is the cognitive development. So overall, the conclusion of this is cognitive development of Jean Piaget theory emphasizes the importance or how important the cognitive development of a child from those stages, the sensory motor, the pre-operational, the concrete and the formal operations of child stages development on improving cognitive development. It emphasizes how important our intellectual abilities, how we construct knowledge, how we construct and adapt the knowledge by the schema, by the assimilation, accommodation, and equilibrium. Overall, Jean Piaget, it shows or it wants us to learn more things. So before I will end these discussions, I would like to ask some questions that will test if you learn something of while I discuss. So, who is the philosopher again? Who is the philosopher has the theory of cognitive development? That's right, it's Jean Piaget, and his theory is the cognitive development. And what are the four stages of cognitive development? We have the sensory motor, the pre-operational, concrete, and formal. So I hope that you learned something and see you!
Lev Vygotsky was a seminal Russian psychologist best known for his sociocultural theory. He believed that social interactions play a critical role in children learning, where a continuous process that is profoundly influenced by culture. Imitations, guided learning, and collaborative learning feature prominently in his theory. Lev Vygotsky was born on November 17, 1899 in Orsha, a city in the Western Russian Empire. In 1917, he earned a law degree at the Moscow State University, where he studied a range of topics including sociology, linguistics, psychology, and philosophy. Vygotsky died of tuberculosis on June 11, 1934, when he was just 37 years old. Although he passed at a young age, he is still considered as a formative thinker in psychology, and much of his work is still being discovered and explored today. His formal work in psychology began in 1924 at Moscow Institute of Psychology. He completed dissertation in 1925 on the psychology of art but was awarded his degree in absentia due to an acute tuberculosis relapse that left him incapacitated for a year. Vygotsky was a prolific writer, publishing 6 books on psychology in 10 years. His interests were diverse but often centered on child development, education, the psychology of art, and language development. He developed several important theories about the way children learn and grow within culture and society. Following his illness, Vygotsky began researching topics such as language, attention, and memory with the help of his students. Among these were Alexei Leontiev, the developmental psychologist and philosopher who developed activity theory, and neuropsychologist Alexander Loria, the author of Higher Cortical Functions in Man. Although he was a contemporary of Skinner, Pavlov, Freud, and Piaget, Vygotsky never attained their level of eminence during his lifetime. The Russian Communist Party often criticized Vygotsky's work, making his writing largely inaccessible to the rest of the world. His premature death also contributed to his obscurity. Despite this, Vygotsky's work has continued to grow in influence since his death, were particularly in the fields of developmental and educational psychology. It wasn't until 1970s that Vygotsky theories become known outside of Russia, as a new concept and ideas emerge in the fields of educational and developmental psychologies. Since then, Vygotsky's work have been translated many times over and have gained international recognition, particularly in the area of education. In Vygotsky's sociocultural theory, she believed that children's sociocultural environment play an important role in how they develop cognitively. He also viewed acquisition of language is a crucial part of cognitive development, where after children acquire language, they don't just go through a set of series of stages. Rather, their cognitive development depends on interaction with adults, cultural norms, and environmental circumstances. Vygotsky also suggests that human development results from a dynamic interaction between individuals and society. Through this interaction, children learn gradually and continuously from parents and teachers. However, this learning varies from one culture to the next. And class, it is important to note that Vygotsky theory emphasizes the dynamic nature of this interaction. Society does not just impact people, but people also affect their society. Vygotsky's sociocultural theory highlights the role of social interactions in learning. This idea is further developed in his concept of the zone of proximal development, or the CPD, where learners benefit from collaborative learning and guidance. What is zone of proximal development, or ZPD? So, the zone of proximal development, or ZPD, was a key construct in Lev Vygotsky theory of learning and development. The zone of proximal development is defined as the space between what a learner can do without assistance and what a learner can do with adult guidance or in collaboration with more capable peers. As you can see in the picture, it have 3 zones of development, where first we have the too easy zone that measures what the student can do without help. Next, the zone of proximal development that measure what student can do with help. And lastly, the too hard zone, which beyond the student abilities. So now that we explore Lev Vygotsky's sociocultural theory and the zone of proximal development, let's delve into another influential psychologist's work. So, who is Erich Hamburger Eriksson? He was born on June 15, 1902 at Frankfurt, Germany, and died in May 12, 1994 at the age of 91 in Harwich, US. He was an American child psychoanalyst known for his theory on psychosocial development of human being. He coined the phrase identity crisis. Erik Erikson is best known for his famous theory of psychosocial development in the concept of identity crisis. His theories mark an important shift in thinking on personality. Instead of focusing simply on early childhood events, his psychosocial theory looks at how social influences contribute to our personalities throughout our entire lifespans. Erikson's stage theory of psychosocial development generated interest and research on human development through lifespan. He was an ego psychologist who studied with E- Anna Freud. Erikson expanded psychoanalytic theory by exploring development throughout life, including events of childhood, adulthood, and old age. Erikson was an ego psychologist who developed one of the most popular and influential theories of development. While his theory was impacted by psychoanalyst Sigmund Freud's work, Erikson's theory centered on psychosocial development rather than psychosexual development. Erikson built upon Vygotsky's ideas on social interactions and development. Erikson's psychosocial development theory proposed that personality growth occurs through 8 distinct stages, shaped by social and cultural influences. While Vygotsky focused on dynamic interplay, so the stages that make up his theory are as follows. So the first stage is trust versus mistrust. It occurs infancy from birth to 18 months. Stage 2, autonomy versus shame and doubt. It occurs toddler years from 18 months to 3 years old. So in stage 3, we have the initiative versus guilt. It occurs preschool years from 3 to 5 years old. Stage 4, industry versus inferiority. It occurs middle school years from 6 to 11 years old. So next we have the stage 5, which is identity versus confusion. It occurs 10 years from 12 to 18 years old. So the stage 6 is intimacy versus isolation. It occurs young adult years from 18 to 40 years old. In stage 7, we have generativity and versus stagnation. It occurs middle age from 40 to 65 years old. So the last stage is integrity versus despair. It occurs older adulthood from 65 to death. Now, let's take a closer look to the background and different stages that make up Erikson's psychosocial theory. So, what exactly did Erikson's theory of psychosocial development entail? Much like Sigmund Freud, Erikson believed that personality developed in a series of stages. Unlike Freud's theory of psychosexual stages, however, Erikson's theory describes the impact of social experience across the whole lifespan. Erikson was interested in how social interaction and relationship played role in the development and growth of human beings. Erikson's theory was based on what is known as the epigenetic principle. This principle suggests that people grow in a sequence that occurs over time and in the context of larger community. So conflict during each stage in Erikson theory builds on the preceding stage and paves the way for following periods of development. In each stage, Erickson believed people experience a conflict that serves as a turning point in development. In Erickson's view, these conflicts are centered on either developing a psychological quality or failing to develop that quality. During this time, the potential for personal growth is high, but so is the potential for failure. If people successfully deal with the conflict, they emerge from the stage with psychological strength that will serve them well for the rest of their lives. In Erickson's view, these conflicts are centered on either developing a psychological quality or failing to develop that quality. During these times, the potential for personal growth is high, but so is the potential for failure. If people successfully deal with the conflict, they emerge from the stage with psychological strengths that will serve them well for the rest of their lives. If they fail to deal effectively with these conflicts, they may not develop the essential skills needed for a strong sense of self. Mastery leads to ego strengths. Erickson also believed that a sense of competence motivates behaviors and actions. Each stage in Erickson's theory is concerned with becoming competent in an area of life. If the stage is handled well, the person will feel a sense of mastery, which is sometimes referred to as ego strength or ego quality. If the stage is managed poorly, the person will emerge with a sense of inadequacy as is that aspect of development. So now, let's examine Erickson's stages from trust and autonomy to integrity and despair and discover how his theory complements Vygotsky's ideas. So first we have the stage 1, the trust versus mistrust. First we have the stage 1, which is the trust versus mistrust. The first stage of Erickson theory of psychosocial development occurs within birth and 1 year of age and is the most fundamental stage in life. Because an infant is utterly dependent, developing trust is based on the dependability and quality of the child's caregivers. At this point in development, the child is utterly dependent upon adult caregivers for everything they need to, in order to survive including food, love, warmth, safety, and nurturing. If a caregiver fails to provide adequate care and love, the child will come to feel that they cannot trust on or depend upon the adults in their life. So the outcomes, if a child successfully develops trust, the child will feel safe and secure in the world. Caregivers who are inconsistent, emotionally unavailable, or rejecting contribute to feeling of mistrust in the children under their care. Failure to develop trust will result in fear and belief that the world is inconsistent and unpredictable. During the first stage of psychosocial development, children develop a sense of trust when caregivers provide reliability, care, and affection. A lack of this will lead to mistrust. No child is going to develop a sense of 100% trust or 100% doubt. Erickson's believed that successful development was all about striking a balance between the two opposing sides. When this happens, children acquire hope, which Erickson described as as an openness to experience tempered by some wariness that danger may be present. Subsequent work by researchers including John Bowlby and Mary Ainsworth demonstrated that the importance of trust in forming healthy attachment during childhood and adulthood. In stage 2, we have the autonomy versus shame and doubt. The second stage of Erikson's theory of psychosocial development takes place during early childhood and is focused on children developing a greater sense of personal control. The rule of independence at this point in development, children are just starting to gain a little independence. They are starting to perform basic action on their own and making simple decisions about what they prefer. By allowing kids to make choices and gain control, parents and caregivers can help children develop a sense of autonomy. Potty training. Potty training is essential theme of this stage is that children need to develop a sense of personal control over physical skills and a sense of independence. Potty trainings plays an important role in helping children develop in this sense of autonomy. Like Freud, Erikson's believed that toilet training was a vital part of this process. However, Erikson's reasoning was quite different than that of Freud's. Erikson's believed that learning to control one's bodily functions lead to a feeling of control and a sense of independence. Other important events include gaining more control over food choices, toy preferences, and clothing selections. So what is the outcomes? So the outcomes, children who struggle and who are shamed for their accidents may be left without a sense of personal control. Success during this stage of psychosocial development lead to feeling of autonomy. Failure result in feeling of shame and doubt. So, finding balance, children who successfully complete this stage feel secure and confident, while those who do not are left with a sense of inadequacy and self doubt. Erickson believed that achieving a balance between autonomy and shame and doubt would lead to will, which is the belief that children can act with intention within reasons and limits. Stage 3, Initiative versus Guilt. The third stage of psychosocial developments take place during the preschool years. At this point, psychosocial development, children begin to assert their power and control over the world through directing play and other social interactions. Children who are successful at this stage feel capable and able to lead others. Those who fail to acquire the skills are left with a sense of guilt, self doubt, and lack of initiative. So, the outcomes, the major theme of the third stage of psychosocial development is that children need to begin asserting control and power over the environment. Success in this stage lead to a sense of purpose. Children who try to exert too much power experience disapproval, resulting in a sense of guilt when ideal balance of individual initiative and a willingness to work with others is achieved. The ego quality known as purpose emerges. So stage 4, industry versus inferiority. The fourth psychosocial stage take place during the early school years from approximately age 5 to 11 years old. Through social interaction, children begin to develop a sense of pride in their accomplishment and abilities. Children need to cope with new social and academic demands. Success leads to a sense of competence while failure results in feeling of inferiority. Children who are encouraged and commended by parents and teachers develop a feeling of competence and a belief in their skills. Those who receive little or no encouragement from parents and teachers or peers will doubt their abilities to be successful. Successfully finding a balance at this stage of psychosocial development leads to the strengths known as competence, in which children develop a belief in their abilities to handle the tasks set before them. So now let's proceed to stage 5, which is identity versus confusions. So the fifth psychosocial stage takes place during the often turbulent teenage years. This stage plays our essential role in developing a sense of personal identity which will continue to influence behavior and development for the rest of a person's life. Teens need to develop a sense of self and personal identity. Success leads to an ability to stay true to yourself, while failure leads to rule confusion and weak sense of self. During adolescence, children explore their independence and develop a sense of self. Those who receive proper encouragement and reinforcement through personal exploration will emerge from this stage with a strong sense of self and feelings of independence and control. Those who remain unsure of their beliefs and desires will feel insecure and confused about themselves and the future. But, class, what is identity? When psychologists talk about identity, they are referring to all the beliefs, ideals, and values that help shape and guide a person's behavior. Completing this stage successfully leads to fidelity, which Erickson described as an ability to live by society standards and expectations. While Erickson believed that each stage of psychosocial development was important, he placed a particular emphasis on the development of ego identity. Ego identity is the conscious sense of self that we develop through social interaction and become a central focus during the identity versus confusion stage of psychosocial development. According to Erickson, our ego identity constantly changes due to new experiences and information we acquire in our daily interaction with others. As we have new experiences, we also take on challenges that can help or hinder the development of identity. Why identity is important? So class, our personal identity give us each of us integrated and cohesive sense of self that endures through our lives. Our sense of personal identity is shaped by our experiences and interaction with others, and in this identity that helps guide our actions, beliefs, and behavior as we age. So the next stage is stage 6, which is intimacy versus isolation. Young adults need to form intimate loving relationship with other people. Success leads to strong relationship while failure results in loneliness and isolation. This stage covers the period of early adulthood when people are exploring personal relationships. Erickson's believed that it was vital that people develop close, committed relationship with other people. Those who are successful at this step will form relationships that are enduring and secure. Building on earlier stage, remember that each step builds on skill drained in precious steps. Erickson's believed that a strong sense of personal identity was important for developing intimate relationships. Studies have demonstrated that those with a poor sense of self tend to have less committed relationship and more likely to struggle with emotional isolation, loneliness, and depressions. Successful resolution of this stage result in the virtue known as love. It is marked by the ability to form lasting, meaningful relationship with other people. So stage 7, generativity versus stagnation. Adults need to create or nurture things that will outlast them, often by having children or creating a positive change that benefits other people. Success leads to a feeling of usefulness and accomplishment, while failure results in shallow involvement in the world. During adulthood, we continue to build our lives, focusing on our career and family. Those who are successful during this phase will feel that they are contributing to the world by being active in their home and community. Those who fail to attain these skills will feel unproductive and involved in the world. Care is the virtue achieved when this stage is handled successfully. Being proud of your accomplishment, watching your children grow into adults, and developing a sense of unity with your life partner are important accomplishment of this stage. So the last stage is the stage 8, which is integrity versus despair. The final psychosocial stage occurs during old age and is focused on reflecting back on life. At this point in development, people look back on the events of their lives and determine if they are happy with the life that they live or if they regret the things that they did or didn't do. Erickson's theory differed from many because it addressed development through the entire lifespan, including old age. Older adults need to look back on life and feel to a sense of fulfillment. Success at this stage lead to feeling of wisdom, while failure result in regret, bitterness, and despair. At this stage, people reflect back on the events of their lives and take stock. Those who look back on a life they feel was well lived will feel satisfied and ready to face the end of their lives with a sense of peace. Those who look back and only feel regret will instead feel fearful and their lives will end without accomplishing the things they feel they should have. So what is the outcomes? Those who are unsuccessful during this stage will feel that their life has been wasted and may experience many regrets. The person will be left with feelings of bitterness and despair. Those who feel proud of their accomplishment will feel a sense of integrity. Successfully completing this phase means looking back with few regrets and a general feeling of satisfaction. These individuals will attain wisdom even confronting death.
Good day everyone, I'm Jude Reynald B. Benitez, and today we are going to discuss one philosopher and their theories on child and adolescent development. So this philosopher right here is no other than Lawrence Kohlberg. Lawrence Kohlberg was an American psychologist and educator known for his theory of moral development. He was born on October 25, 1927 at Bronxville, New York, United States, and died on January 17, 1987 at Boston, Massachusetts. Kohlberg's theory was highly influential, especially in psychology and education. No other account had provided such a detailed explanation of children's moral development. His theory was entitled Moral Development. Lawrence Kohlberg devised a theory of moral development which postulates that moral reasoning passes through 6 stages from early childhood to adulthood, and these are avoiding punishment, aiming at reward, good boy and girl attitude, loyalty to law and order, justice and spirit of the law, and last but not least, the universal principles of ethics. Kohlberg stages are sorted into 3 discontinuous levels, and these are pre-conventional level, conventional level, and post-conventional level. Each stages involves a more advanced level of reasoning that coincides with cognitive development and life experiences. Let's start first with the levels. First level is the pre-conventional level, which varies from 3 to 7 years old, and it includes the stages 1 and 2. Second is the conventional level that varies from 8 to 13 years old, and it includes stages 3 and 4. Lastly is the post-conventional level that varies from adulthood, which includes stages from 5 to 6. Now let's proceed to the stages. First stage is the obedience or punishment orientation. At very young ages, children define the morality of a behavior as a direct function of its consequences. In this childish reasoning, behavior that is punished is not moral, and behavior that is rewarded is moral. Children believe that people should obey rules so they can avoid punishment. Rules are absolute and flexible. Second is individualism and exchange. At this stage, children will begin to understand that different people may have different perspectives regarding the same situation. Rules are not absolute because there isn't just one correct point of view. actions and moral dilemmas are based on self-interest, not just strict adherence to external rules. Third is establishing good interpersonal relationships. At this stage, moral decisions are based on how they affect interpersonal relationships. There is an emphasis on the meeting of the expectations of the social groups and being seen as a good member of that group. People at this stage consciously engage in pro-social behavior. Fourth is the maintaining social order. Individuals now become less concerned about interpersonal consequences and more focused on a broader perspective of maintaining a social order. Children begin to embrace the concept of social roles and start to see where they fit in a social hierarchy. Fifth is the social contract and individual rights. Laws are regarded as a social constructor, the greater good, but are not perfect. People begin to consider the different values and beliefs of others when defining morality. If laws violate human rights, then alternatives should be devised. Lastly is the universal principles. In this final stage of moral reasoning, people develop their own concept of morality based on the abstract reasoning and the universal ethical principles. Society's laws may or may not be consistent with or uphold those universal principles. In conclusion, Lawrence Kohlberg's theory of moral development provides a framework for understanding moral reasoning, significantly influencing educational practices. His stages help educators comprehend students' behavior and decision-making for processes. For instance, attempting to persuade a student behave in a certain way without recognizing their developmental stage may be ineffective. And these are the stages and levels that can be found in the theory of Lawrence, which is moral development. I hope you learned something today. Bye!
Hello everyone, my name is Ryan JC Tampok. I'm going to discuss about Uris Bronfenbrenner's ecological system theory, or the EST. So the EST revolutionized our understanding of human development. This framework explains how individuals' development is influenced by various environmental levels. We have the key concept. The key concept, we have number 1, microsystem, immediate environment with family, school, peers. Number 2, mesosystem, connection between microsystem, home-school relationship. Exosystem, internal influences, social service, community resources. Macrosystem, cultural and societal factors with values and policies. The 5th one, chronosystem, temporal influence, historical event, life transitions, and etc. How is works? Number 1, bi-directional influences. Each system's effects is affected by others. Number 2, person-environmental interactions. Of individual shapes are shaped by their environment. Number 3, the last one, developmental pathways. EST highlights the dynamic, ever-changing nature of development. We have also the implication. Holistic understanding, EST considered the entire ecological context. Intervention strategies targeting specific system can promote positive change. Third one, cultural sensitivity. EST acknowledges the role of cultural values and norms. Criticism and limitation. Number 1, complexity. EST can be difficult to apply in practice. Number 2, lack of empirical support. Some critics argue the EST lacks sufficient empirical evidence. The third one, overemphasis on environment. Some argue that EST neglect individual agency. So that's all for Uris Bronfenbrenner ecological system.